examples of that. So I just want to ask this question: why would you enslave monkeys and bees and humans?
Yeah. And if you notice there in the comments, Bish Doctor says, "Well, don't consume almonds and coconuts or avocados."
What about
Right?
cashews? What about cashews?
Cashews, um, bananas, um,
Origins,
soybeans, um,
palm oil.
star fruit.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff you need to exclude, I guess.
I don't. What would be left? I don't think I can't think of one plant food that would be left if we excluded everything that's either environmentally destructive, killing animals in such high numbers that it's causing extinctions, or poisoning the environment for every living creature on Earth. Hmm.
Jeffrey Phillips asked me if I was a liberal or something. I'm not sure how that's relevant, but okay. I mean, I guess I'm a centrist, if you want to put me in that box. So I'm like both left and right wing, or none of that, if you want to call it. I don't believe in left or right politics. So I think this is outdated, actually. I look at things uh, pretty much issue to issue and decide on that. But I guess on certain issues, I'm more left leaning, and on some other issues, I'm not. And that's that. If you wanted to know that for some reason. But yeah, we can
So,
go on with the video
okay.
if you, or do you have further
I was
things
just
to
going
say?
to say, Bish Doctor is saying, so the 2% of vegans are responsible for the world in which is now that, is that what you're saying? And
Yeah,
again,
this
Bish
is this is
Doctor,
this is a straw man.
yeah, it's a straw man because that 2%, Bish Doctor wants the entire Earth to be covered with 100% vegans. This 2% thing is more of it's kind of a concession of defeat that after all these years, all you got is 2%. I think that says volumes about your cult. But the fact that the 2% is trying to destroy animal agriculture based on the idea that a vegan diet is cruelty free is on its face fraudulent, especially considering the fact that quadrillions more animals suffer and die as a result of the toxic factory destructive monocropping that produces the items on the vegan menu. You agree?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, yeah, he says 2% are vegan, okay, but you're talking about individual consumption, individual responsibility. So I don't know why this matters. Uh, we're talking about what is like ethical or not ethical to consume as an individual. So why does it matter if 2% of uh, the population are vegan? And also, you want to, like you said, you want to increase that number to 100%, and we have to look at the entailments of that, or actually, you have to provide us with the details of how that would actually work. But yeah,
Well,
the-
also this idea that their excuse for eating food that requires this gargantuan amount of animal suffering and death with all the pesticides and shooting, crop protection shootings, and all of that. quadrillion. You remember?
1,000.
Okay. Now more trillion and what is it, 3.5 quadrillion animals that men are counting as the crop agriculture that produces the item mink and grown items be consumed by humans. Or corn or feed oil for oil, all of these are human products, and then left over won't buy it, not edible, that livestock lying, saying that we're my product, the animals are going to attribute all of those acres based on the weight of the byproduct. So the other, I want to try to speak down, can't stop in, they can't stop interrupting, they can't question, they answer questions.
What? That's what,
Yeah.
that's what Garland does.
Here's the thing, right? How do you have a respectful not a debate, but just discussion with a vegan all issues, right? So to get to
Or not that.
research or to talk about what the future would look like, a bit more effective and sustainable food system, and explore that. And, right? Situation for animals, humans, and environment is feasible. I would love to have that discussion actually.
Weird debate tactics. I can't believe these vegans actually want to look at studies and figure out what actually is going on. Yeah. And he, in his assessment of the study, maybe we just got to watch that again. This is boring. He's not letting me. Pussy.
Possible important some tactics and actually have an honest look at evidence and have an discussion about that. More to be honest.
Free going.
Please.
Everybody here?
You
there?
You know, the balls that it takes to completely ignore the fact that quadrillions of animals are dying.
Quadrillions, huh?
For the crop.
There we go. Quadrillions? Yeah. I'd love to see your source for quadrillions. I've seen all the studies on on crop deaths. There's no words. There's no numbers in the quadrillions. Oh yeah. Pull them up then. Instead of watching the death of your savior, Sean Baker. Already. Then why don't you take responsibility for the plant agriculture that's on your plate? Oh yeah, speechless, huh? No, you don't. You don't take responsibility for any of it. You blame it all on vegans.
No, I don't.
Anti-war mindset. So debating is a low form of information exchange to you?
So yeah.
Well, that shows all you know. You don't know shit about shit, obviously. You think that the adjustments in studies are irrelevant and unscientific, and that we can't look at these studies and but then debate tactics aren't good. Using debates to figure out the truth about things is low information, right? You just want to have a discussion with a reasonable vegan and figure out the best way of doing things. Like it's such a cop out, dude. That's not a study, Garland Farms. Show me the study. How many years have you been dealing with me? I want to see the study. I don't want to see an article on a website.
We're talking about crop.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about crop deaths anyway.
So I have the information from our last debate.
Insecticides are mostly used on hay, which goes towards animal ag. So we got the notes from our last debate. Do you want Allie to read it to you?
Jeffrey. For that.
You're still providing your source.
Would you say there's no pesticide used on hay, Garland?
On fruits.
That you eat, right? Yeah, like, and what do you mean?
I don't. And also, we need a source for that.
Where's that source? Where's the study where they found that number, Garland? But how come 3 years into of knowing each other, you still don't know how to pull up a study? It boggles my mind. Like anti-war mindset took 40 minutes to show me the study he was talking about. Not that I needed to see it to dissect his BS logic behind not ignoring of the study that go in his agenda. No.
Okay. For like or something, then you might see it. I don't know.
Where's the study, Garland? That's not a study. You're just scrolling down a website. That's not a study, Garland Farms. This is a website with a talking about what grant money is going towards some sort of. Where's the quadrillion, the study where scientists sat there and counted individually every insect that died?
Let's see.
3.5.
Be nice.
Allie's got them right here.
Well, I have the study we talked about in our debate.
I'm just kind of confused why we're coming back here and having to go over stuff we set to rest last year. Garland seems to change his story on things quite a bit. Study. Where does it say in a study quadrillions? And you said animals earlier. You said animals, Garland. When you first talked about this study, you said animals. You were talking about animals, Garland.
Maybe while
how come this is about bugs when you said animals? Bugs are animals. Highly sentient beings. bugs aren't what vegans are talking about when they talk about sentience.
Or not, you can include. Doesn't really matter.
Bugs like you guys realize vegans understand when they drive a car they hit bugs, right? Like you guys know that we know that. We aren't claiming that we're not killing bugs. I can't believe 2 years in, Garland, I'm still explaining this shit to you. Yeah, on hay that's fed to all your grass-fed cows, and the corn and the soy that goes to your cows. Garland, your mic is cutting out like crazy. We can't hear you. How come you guys go quiet and scatter around for like 20 minutes whenever I ask you to prove something you've said on the show? Ambush? How am I ambushing you on your channel? Like, that doesn't make sense. You guys are here and I came here. And 10 minutes in, you can't show me the study that you're claiming. You should have it as a favorite on your desktop because it's something you talk about so often. You have to prove it to people. Every time I ask you to prove these things you're saying, you're literally quoting a study, but you don't have it in front of you. So how are you quoting it? Off the top of your head, you must be a master study reader. But by what Anti-War Mindset said last week, he doesn't know anything about studies. So how are you guys quoting studies, but then you can't even describe what happens in a study? I know a lot more than you. I know that the adjustments that the scientists make in the study are very relevant to the outcome of the study. I know they don't just do it for silly reasons. How so? How so? What's the point of doing a study if they're not going to do the study? Making adjustments in a study is doing science. That's what doing a study means. Like, you don't think adjustments in a study are relevant. You said that 2 weeks ago. You said veganism is debunked because some study made that the scientists made adjustments that didn't go in the favor of your agenda. Therefore, veganism is debunked. Yes, you did. Do we have to watch it again? Do I have to pull it up? Semantics, bro. And the unadjusted outcome data isn't a study, bro. It's a part of data. It's one part of the data. It is not the study. You can't just discount a study because you think you can just go in and change it. Like, what planet do you are you on, dude? You're smarter than the scientists. You're smarter than the scientists that did the study. Therefore, but you can't even describe to me anything about these studies that you're quoting, but you think you're smarter than the guys that did the study. Yes, I am being disrespectful because you're a dishonest man, just like Garland. He kicked me out. Huh. Anyway. Oh, it's fine. I can't hear it. So yeah, Garland's a pussy and needs to have people backing him up. And the people backing him up they're just as low-hanging fruit as he is. These guys don't know what they're talking about. You got to look at the raw data. Right.
Can I read the excerpt from the study from about at least crop deaths? The one of the few studies that they've done. A research paper stated that 7.3 billion animals were killed every year from plant agriculture. That's as well as mouse deaths, birds killed from pesticides, fish killed by fertilizer runoff, lizards and amphibians killed by eating insects contaminated with toxic pesticides, etc. So 7.3 billion animals killed every year from plant agriculture. The amount of animals killed directly for consumption is 9.5 billion. It's 9.5 billion land animals that are killed directly for food in the U.S. each year. And that's not with marine animals or fish. So when you add marine animals, that number becomes 55 billion. So 55 billion animals are killed per year directly for food versus 7.3 billion from all the things I described from plant agriculture. So this is why I was hoping we could get to, Garland's source. And this is what I brought up in our debate with him. And all he said was, oh, that study is bunk. And that's because he said it's, just because he said it wasn't a good study. And he didn't say why. So I was hoping we could get to that. But that's the information I mean, of everything.
And that's
I've
like
done,
we
all the
we
research.
searched quite a bit to find all the information on crop deaths, as well as I think it was a study done in Chile or Argentina,
Yeah,
where they literally,
study.
They did a study on a big piece of land and like watched what happened when animal ag and plant ag came through and did all the data. And I thought the marine animals went into like the trillions. Fish and shrimp.
55 billion. I mean, that's a lot.
I thought it was like 11 trillion or something, like something insane. But
well,
yeah, it's still,
I don't. And this number is from.
But these guys are talking about bugs. They're not even talking about animals. They're just talking about bugs. Bugs are creatures. Are they considered animals?
I don't see how that's even relevant to the debate.
It isn't. It's just a word.
But I have the text here from that 2004 study from Argentina. It examined the effect of wheat and corn harvesting in central Argentina. It compared the population and distribution of grass mice in 3 habitats: crop fields, regions bordering the fields, and the wider surrounding area. While the number of mice found in fields substantially decreased after harvest, their number substantially increased in the border regions. When it came to disappearances, a category that included both mouse deaths, and migration out of the study area, there was no significant difference between the 3 habitats. The study concluded that the changes in the number of field animals were the consequences of movement and not of higher mortality in the crop area. So again,
certain amount of the animals avoided the area.
They've from the little studies they've done, they've shown that yes, there's the measurable population of mice migrate out of the area where they're harvesting the corn. So this is kind of in response to Garland and all these people talking about how these numbers of crop deaths are really higher than vegans want to admit, quote unquote. But looking at the data that I can come across,
the only studies available, it's not true.
It really doesn't look like that. And then Garland again said this Argentina study was complete bunk BS for.
He said every study we had was backed by Bill Gates or something like that. Thus irrelevant, which is absolutely not how science
by
works.
Some vegan agenda. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, well, show us a better study. Show us
what's wrong with this study. Prove that there's some wrong. That's how science would go about it. They would say, okay, you have a problem with the study. Prove to us which part of it is wrong. You can't just say, oh, there's money involved, therefore. You have to say, you have to figure it out. But Garland's a dishonest, angry old man who's, has ailing health because of his terrible diet and the amount of stress he puts himself through going after vegans. The last time we had our debate, he vanished for 3 months and came back way more gray than he used to be. Talk about carnivore deterioration. And now he won't even show his face on his podcast. And he sounds like an old man. And, it's pretty funny. But I guess we'll watch this Mike the Vegan video.
It's Mike here, and today a new study from one of Nature's journals is leading to headlines such as "Experts find cavemen ate mostly vegan, debunking paleo diet," which of course ruffled some feathers and led to some fun Facebook comments that we'll cover. Like, I love these articles. Every time I see one, I eat another animal. Keep making stuff up and I'll keep eating. So we're going to hear from the authors. We're going to crack open the study, learn the basics, see what methods they use that were newer to improve upon previous methods, as well as look at just the background of science that we have on this, which is sort of shifting the picture here. Anyway, let's get to what the researchers say. They say, quote, "Our analysis showed that these hunter-gatherer groups, they included an important amount of plant matter, wild plants to their diet, which changed our understanding of the diet of pre-agricultural populations." There's been a lot of debate about how much meat was eaten by our ancestors. And well, I don't think it matters as much in terms of what we should eat today. What we should eat today should be what's healthy for us and what the research shows is healthy. In terms of a plant-based diet, we see lower disease rates, etc., stuff I talk about all of the time. But I'm also just really interested in archaeology, so I love this stuff. And then we also have people on like the carnivore diet saying that humans just ate meat throughout human history, and so we're designed to only eat meat, otherwise things go wrong. Denying the fact that red meat is a carcinogen according to the WHO for us, but not for lions. Anyway, you get that point. But let's get to the question of bias first. Sometimes I like to hit that, as well as funding. Was this all just part of some weird vegan propaganda? Like this one Facebook person says, "Vegans clearly wrote this dodgy article." However, there's no indication that any of these authors are vegan, and there's several of them which have used roughly the same title, perhaps to make people like this person engage with it and get them more clicks. But also to the authors of the article, no indication that they were vegan at all, especially, vegans don't tend to use bovine liver powder as a control. And, this is a legit publication. It's from Nature's Ecology and Evolution Journal, and it was funded by legit non-vegan organizations like the Max Planck Institute. But moving to the basics of the study, it looked at pre-agricultural humans that were in Tafaralt, Morocco. This is North Africa, and they were from 13,000 to 15,000 years old. The bones, not the people, and I should emphasize that they were people. These are Homo sapiens, which apparently some people missed. I mean, to one Facebook commenter responding to the notion that they were mostly vegan with, "and now they are extinct." But no, Homo sapiens are not extinct, and I'm assuming he's mixing them up with Neanderthals, which have bred into us, so they're technically extinct, but they also kind of live on through us. Some of us have a little bit more Neanderthal than others. You probably know one of those people off the top of your head, but I will say Neanderthals get a bad rap. First of all, they dominated Europe for 300,000 years, virtually all of that without humans until 40,000 years ago. Anyway, what about the methods of the study? Well, they used a comprehensive multi-isotopic approach, which included zinc, strontium, carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur isotopes in bone and teeth. And as they say, some of these are new isotope tracers that are more sensitive to plant consumption. And what is this actually showing? Well, looking to our classic isotopes, which is carbon and nitrogen from Durham University, quote, "The isotopic composition of the carbon and nitrogen in collagen reflects the isotopic composition primarily of the plant and animal protein in foods eaten by a person while the bones and teeth were forming and collagen was being synthesized." But these especially can have limitations related to the environment, such as dryness, the elemental makeup of the soil, and also soil fungi networks, mycorrhizae. Anyway, they combat this by also comparing local animal isotopes like herbivores, carnivores, etc., to gauge where they are. And it is also the case that carnivores have used these isotope ratios to say, "Oh, look at how much meat various populations were eating. Clearly, we're meant to eat only meat." But it is the case that mistakes can be made in this area, as the study itself mentions. Doing this the wrong way can overestimate meat consumption by 60 to 80%, which is one of many ways that animal consumption has been overestimated. We'll cover more later on. But let's get to those main results. and first of all, just how the authors were surprised at how plant-based these people were. Quote, "Our results unequivocally demonstrate a substantial plant-based component in the diets of these hunter-gatherers. This distinct dietary pattern challenges the prevailing notion of high reliance on animal proteins among pre-agricultural human groups." So I can whip through some of the different isotope results, starting with nitrogen. And from this chart, yeah, this one blue triangle guy was right down there with the herbivores, straight up rolling with the herbies. Others weren't quite as far down, but still highly plant-based. And then as for the carbon results, looking to this chart, we can just look at this chunk, which is the herbivores in that area in Taffaralt. And then we have the Taffaralt people, and you can just see that major overlap there. And for the zinc results, they say that they found higher zinc tooth enamel content, which indicates less animal consumption, going as far as to say, quote, "These values are close to those of Taffaralt herbivores." So what were these Moroccan ancient people munching on? Well, they say they lived in a forest and they were eating things like acorns, other nuts, as well as wild legumes. That's what survived in these. They also go as far as to hypothesize that the children in this group were weaned onto starchy foods. But it is worth mentioning that by no means was this population fully vegan. Researchers say, quote, "It must be stressed that the Taffaralt humans studied here were not strict vegetarians." A ridiculous word for vegetarian, but a great word for a vegan Italian restaurant. And I want to say this fits into a growing picture that, yeah, our ancestors weren't fully vegan. Why would they choose to not eat something that is available to them? But it's also the case that we probably weren't eating as much meat as people thought. I mean, we have this study, which also shattered some paradigms, which adjusted for sampling bias at archaeological sites and bones and things like that, and found really no increase in human meat consumption during key brain growth periods. I have a whole video on that one. And there's just how technology is advancing, and we have just various other biases, like as this study even mentions, that obviously bones last longer than plant matter in general. However, we've been able to now look at dental plaques in addition to that. And through those fossilized plaques, we've been able to find a ton of different plant species, even to Neanderthals that are super plant-based as well. This is making a larger picture. As this Guardian article mentions, quote, "Neanderthals from El Cedrone showed no evidence of meat eating after investigating their plaque." And then we also have how the science of these isotopes can exaggerate things as well. In addition to just that 60 to 80% overestimate that the study mentions, we also have, as they say, how cooking through charring can actually increase the nitrogen-15 isotope count, which can make plants eaten by humans look more like they were eating animal products. In the end, I once again don't think that what prehistoric people ate should have the ultimate bearing on what we eat. I mean, we have a lot of evidence of, cannibalism in the human past. That's not like a justification that we should all be cannibal or prescription for it. But again, I love this stuff. And it's also just really interesting to see how the field is advancing. They're learning from their mistakes. They're using new methods, new isotopes. But of course, the headlines like these, which are going to keep coming as we find more and more plants at these sites, are just going to make people mad, these Facebook commenters mad, etc. And I should also just mention, I haven't talked about how I released an ebook not that long ago, Level 5 Vegan, a guide for long-term vegans. So if you want to check that out, you can below. And of course, also let me know in the comment section what you think about all of this, and feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
You there, Brax?
Yeah, you said my mic loud?
It's okay now. I turned it down.
Say that might be
So that's like the second. I feel like that's the second study to come out. Because a couple of months ago, the whole they figured out it was gather hunter, not hunter gatherer. And then this one, shows obviously that the carbon, like the tests they were doing were BS, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, like that one, the like zinc isotopes or whatever, where showing that that it could easily be mistaken for animal products. That was pretty interesting. was awkward.
It's all
Where'd
on
you
you
go?
now, dude.
Oh, what's up? It's my show now.
Yeah, so Garland kicked me out.
So what
Like a
happened with
little
that?
pussy.
I didn't catch the back end of that.
Well, he's just using the fact that I'm aggressively speaking to them as an excuse to get out of the conversation. It's just like the last time I went there. They're just scrambling around. It's funny. It's like these boomers don't know how to podcast. Like every time I've gone on there and I called him out for something, he just goes quiet and just sits there all. And then like he'll start bumbling around. You'll go watch all the videos we did with him and Jason John Schwartz.
Mm-hmm.
They both start pulling up screens and bumbling around, like looking for stuff, but like all and they'll start talking to each other, like trying to like coordinate finding this study that doesn't exist. You know, like they do the same thing every single time. I don't know why he wants me to go up there so much because I don't think there's been a single time where I went up there and left and was like, oh, I didn't just smoke those guys. Like, you know, like it's like, come on, you guys. And then it's like Garland's got this guy on the show as his like study expert. And the guy's like, oh, we're just going to take half of the reason the study exists out of it. We're going to take the scientists, like the scientific adjustments, which are mandatory for any study to be legitimate. We're just going to take those out. And not look at the fact that maybe, there are other reasons that people could be unhealthy or whatever, like you have to take all these things into account. But it's pure like, and then he's all, oh, I don't want to debate these guys. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, go look up the definition of debate. It's where two people, like come with the facts and both look over it in public and like, debate the points that they're there to debate and with that should be backed up with science, like, so these guys just don't want to use science. And then they want to virtue signal like liberals any chance they get. Like I was like, Garland, are you not showing your face on your show now because you got pink and blue hair and a little mohawk or something? Like, if you turned lib, is this a lib show now where you're virtue signaling about anyone using the word Holocaust as an anti-Semite? Like, are you what? Like,
yeah,
that's crazy. What else did he say? He said something else that was completely ridiculous too. That's just like, and then they're making all these generalizations and appealing to the crowd and straw manning millions of vegans. And what's the straw man? What's the straw man? Like, bro, come on, give me a break. Don't use the word straw man if you don't want to debate people. Like it's like you're either in or out. This halfway thing that these carnists love doing. It's like he's all, I just want to have a conversation with a mellow vegan. It's like to figure out what we could do and have a happy meeting. Like, give me a break, bro. Like, get out of my face. You're up here lying week after week. You're lying to people and you're promoting a diet that is unhealthy for the world and for the human that's been convinced by your propaganda.
Yeah, it's not an honest exchange. And like, that's all the thing is that, like, debates are supposed to be it's supposed to be an argument. You're supposed to be clarifying on certain points so people can like together, like consciously, or conscientiously, I guess, like move towards the ultimate truth, which they don't seem to be interested in because they just have their script, their playbook that they always stick to.
Yeah.
That was fed to them by other people on social media.
Yeah. So because they don't know anything about studies, they just, oh, I don't want to deal with studies, then therefore I don't want to debate. Garland got his ass stomped on by me and Allie, so he, publicly, and had to admit to the world in front of Chris Hines, aka the Crab. I think he's called something else now. But like, we're Garland's biggest trolls. So
he's wiped clean of all that now, though. He's just looping back to
everything from before, and it's like, dude, we just spent 2 years on this. Now you're denying everything, and you're just like, oh, now you're going to talk about biofuels more. You're going to slightly adjust your arguments. I don't know why he keeps letting me up there, but he does. I think that's the first time he's kicked me off. He's never kicked me off before. It's like, dude, why are you hiding behind some Indian guy who doesn't know what he's talking about? You know, yeah. He's being disrespectful. Oh my God. How dare I be disrespectful towards people disrespecting the world? You know, like literal demons promoting unhealthy lifestyle. Steve hates when I do podcasts.
Yeah, he's getting loud.
How come you aren't in the camper?
My internet is acting up a little bit now.
Yeah.
I might try to tweak it a little bit. Do we have anybody else coming up? We gotta let everybody know. We're going live.
Yeah, it's like because I didn't. It's because we didn't do the one last week.
Yeah.
So we lost our momentum.
Little momentum loss. It's all right.
We gotta build back again.
I'll get Chris Hines back up here. Get Al Jones. What do you got on the top of your mind? Okay, Judy Wood. What do you think about Judy Wood?
Oh, that was crazy. That's like ever since I saw that, that's like essentials, like must watch for anybody who considers himself to be any kind of a truther. That was like fascinating.
Yeah. So there's a 2-hour-long lecture on YouTube by a lady named Judy Wood at a alternative energy convention or something. Not alternative energy. What's it called? It's some
free energy
convention, something like that. It's 2 hours. There's a couple lectures that are an hour, but those aren't as good. You got to watch the 2-hour one. But it's basically what happened on 9/11. You know, a certain type of weapon or energy source or technology was used to vaporize the steel in the Twin Towers. And this nice, funny scientist lady breaks it all down for you. You know, that means architects and engineers were liars too. All the BS around it was all BS. We were duped. Yeah. So anyway, these videos have like 10,000 views on them total on YouTube. You know, like they haven't been seen by many people. But when Braxton, I gave it to, we watched it as mandatory, you know, like mandatory watching, where it's like, okay, what have you not seen? Like Judy Wood is a pretty big deal. That was a big, like, mind blow watching that video, but you guys should watch it. Free energy conference lecture, Dr. Judy Wood. She comes out, you know, the video she comes out in a doctor's outfit, like a white coat, and she makes a joke about the white coat. That's the right video. But yeah, Brax. So yeah, what do you think about it?
I mean, I thought it was wild. There's like the Hutchinson fact. Obviously, that was. I mean, seeing the footage of that was completely like nothing I've seen before. Watching like actual hard metals shrink down. That's insane.
Yeah.
That also the whole like discovery of tritium and like a completely different element than what exists on like the periodic table. That's kind of nuts that effect is capable of basically alchemy. That's a really interesting find.
That old scientist being like making the joke about, you know, what we're seeing looks like alchemy to me as a scientist. You know, this looks like this is some crazy stuff that we didn't know could happen.
Yeah, and it begs the question of what could happen.
Yeah.
Like, what's possible that is out there.
And then it was like the California fires kept happening, and the cars looked toasted, and like houses were burnt, but trees weren't. And, you know, everybody was like, Judy. And like someone called into a show she was on and asked her about it. And she was like, yeah, I don't think it's anything. She didn't think it was the same thing. But you kind of, you know, scientists, they still have their You know, like where they hear something new and they'll be all bad, you know, like they won't look into it. Like all humans do that, including scientists. So she may not have really like open-mindedly looked at it, but all the like toasty cars, you know, with like all the metal melted out the bottom of them, but like the cars don't really look that hot. They just look like, you know, they were like left out in the desert too long. But yeah, that's a pretty interesting, what's it called? Dustification.
Yeah,
And the Cheetos.
The little Cheetos, which I'm guessing that was from the Hutchinson effect. That's what. Well, I don't know. I'd have to watch that again to see.
Something with the technology, whatever that technology is. It's like making some sort of. I don't even know. You sneezing?
Oh, I'm kind of losing connection here and there.
Yeah, your connection's pretty bad too.
Yeah, it's a little rough. Hopefully that'll be fixed soon.
We're
That'll be good.
what was that?
A lot of funny sounds.
Yeah. I think we're gonna watch another Mike the Vegan video.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go through my my show notes, find some stuff that we should watch one of these times, or maybe tonight. We'll see. Still getting organized.
Carcinogen according to WHO, and then class 2A for red meat. And Dr. Peta Atia, I said PETA, but it reminds me of
PETA.
Family Guy.
That's a great idea, Brian. Maybe you could join PETA.
Join me for what?
No, PETA, the organization. PETA is an acronym, PETA.
No, I'm not. I'm Catholic.
And Dr. Peta Atia, super well-selling, best-selling author for his Outlive book on longevity. Many of you have asked me to comment about him. I've almost commented about him in the past, especially because he sort of puts exercise way ahead of dietary changes and even says that he wants to stay out of the sort of tribal dietary stuff. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is the interview that many of you have asked me to respond to. I don't know who this guy is asking him questions, but this is going to be one of my classic V actions. I'm just going to do a raw reaction and then, of course, add stuff that needs to be added later. So a mix of, and also I got a new microphone. Hopefully it sounds good. I even like taped my little logo on there. So let's see how that goes.
And so if you had to look at that statement, say just red meat gives you cancer, where would you rank that in our ranking system today?
So this is going to sound bold, but I would actually put this in the nonsense category.
Okay, right off the bat, he's putting this in the nonsense category. So the WHO's like team of scientists that reviewed all the studies on the topic. They're just wrong. Peter Attia's right. Let's see what his argument is.
Which is not to say that a dietary pattern high in red meat could not play a role in the development of cancer. But that's very different than the question. So if the question is, does red meat cause cancer? I think that is not correct. And I think there's plenty of evidence that that is not correct. If the question is, do people...
Okay, distinction that needs to be made. He's saying there's plenty of evidence that that's not correct. It is worth mentioning, there is a high level of evidence that needs to be presented to prove that something is causal. And that's why they left it at probable carcinogen. Some other things in that category are like hydrazine, lead, DDT, and some other things that, might need a little bit more data. But it's also the case that you need just as strong of evidence to say that something does not cause something as you do to say that it does cause it. So my guess is he's not going to present all of that in this, sort of off the cuff interview, but let's see.
People who eat a lot of red meat, or do people who eat a lot of processed red meat have a higher risk of getting cancer? I think the answer to that question is yes, but it's probably less because of the meat, although in the case of certain processing, it may be the case, but it's probably much more because of what they're not eating. It's probably much more because their diets tend to be much lower in vegetables. And
at least he likes vegetables still. That's why I actually haven't responded to him as soon as I should have, because there's so many like carnivore crazy people out there that just need to be responded to first. But I was like, I might as well.
Specifically much lower in insoluble fiber, which plays a very important role in the prevention of colorectal cancer. So,
but why does it? And this is where, you could argue we have studies showing that chlorophyll might offset the negative effects of heme iron. However, that's sort of like saying, just because chlorophyll might offset some of the carcinogenic nature of smoking, just antioxidants in your bloodstream, for example. Therefore, smoking doesn't cause cancer. Obviously, that's a more extreme example, but I don't see how his logic of this dietary pattern where like there's probably this carcinogen here, but if you eat enough vegetables, you're okay. Although I guess he's saying, it's actually the positive effect of these other foods. Well, then I would ask him, why is red meat sticking out of the pack here? And perhaps this is a good time to hit this quite recent 2023 study. I have not mentioned this study yet, but it's a massive, interesting one. And it mentions the WHO's status of probable, and that is the motivation for actually doing this research, saying, yeah, they asked for more data. Let's get more data. They say, yeah, in the past, we've had studies that are like 100,000 people, and then they got up to 500,000 people, then to millions. And in this study, looking at 150 countries, they're more or less covering billions. And the result is that unprocessed red meat consumption is quite highly correlated with overall all cancers. And they did a bunch of interesting things here. That correlation was up around an R of 0.8, which is highly correlated. But we can look at this chart here, and it is the case that a correlation value over 0.5, in my opinion, very notable. The higher up you get, even more concerning. And yeah, 11 cancers were over that threshold. We have skin and multiple myelomas heavily correlated at the top, and being actually marked as previously unexplored for that connection. Then we have leukemia, as well as breast and prostate cancer, actually beating out colorectal cancer, followed by testicular lymphoma and other concerning cancers as well. They also noted something really interesting that they say contributes to the causality. They say that there seems to be a pretty distinct, roughly 18-year lag between increases or decreases in red meat consumption and then the corresponding increase or decrease in colorectal cancer. This is across several countries, and they say that this is a strong reason to support causality here. But let's let them get back into it.
The debate on red meat and cancer goes back for long periods of time. And again, it suffers from all of the usual trappings of nutritional epidemiology, which is why John Ioannidis famously said that all nutritional epidemiology belongs in the wastebasket.
Yeah, we're just going to throw out all nutritional epidemiology. In fact, let's just go straight back to anecdotes. I think that would be great.
200 years
of
most
science. Obvious problems with nutritional epidemiology in this regard are that it's very difficult to get an accurate reflection of what people consume using food frequency questionnaires. It's almost impossible.
Questionnaire? I know he knows what a questionnaire is, but it makes me think of like a musketeer that's asking you a question. We are the 3 questionnaires. Fill out this form or swordplay. But yeah, we have meta-analyses like these showing food frequency questionnaires are reliable, especially under 1 year. And at this point, I should mention that this video is sponsored by Seeds DS01, a daily symbiotic, a prebiotic, and a probiotic that has 53.6 billion active bacterial cell units from 24 different strains, which are scientifically shown to support various areas of health, like
what we refer to as the healthy user bias. So I don't dispute for one moment that every time you do an epidemiologic survey and you compare people who live on hot dogs and pepperoni to vegetarians, the epidemiology will always tell you that the vegetarians are going to live longer.
And is he going to say that's because they're vegetarian? Well, he did support vegetable and fiber consumption earlier.
And while that might be an extreme example, you do appreciate that on average, those vegetarians have a much higher socioeconomic status. They are much more health conscious. They are exercising much more. They are much less likely to be smoking, doing yoga, all these other things. And they're
Yeah, this is what has been brought up a lot. Yeah, that healthy user bias. Again, it's probably like the 5th time I've heard it. And it can be used to essentially just dismiss anything in which you're getting a positive result for a food or a practice. And this is a good opportunity to plug Dr. Matthew Nagra, who also responded to him.
We still see associations between unprocessed red meat consumption and colorectal cancer. And in some studies like the UK Biobank, those who eat more red meat are actually of higher socioeconomic status, yet still have higher risk.
And going back to that study, actually, from this chart here, on the left, of course, we just have that cancer rate and red meat consumption. But then on the right, you can see the bigger circles means higher socioeconomic status. And yeah, as we've known, red meat is associated with an increased higher socioeconomic status because it's an expensive food. In developing nations, it's considered a luxury, etc. And so I don't know where he's going with that. Yeah, it probably is the case that there are certain habits that people that are vegan or vegetarian have that are better, but we adjust for that. And in many times I've explained that we over adjust for that crap. For example, taking things that are causally linked to the diet, like BMI being lower because of higher fiber and higher water consumption in food, leading to lower caloric intake. We have randomized trials showing it lowers BMI, yet we end up adjusting for that and lessening the effect, which is really frustrating. So, this can go either way here, but he's acting like, red meat is just fine. In the case of red meat, it's only confounding factors. It's only other things and habits that could also be skewing the results, which is frustrating. And where I have to just straight up call him out for one of the things that I know about him and his habits, that multiple sources show that he's eating between 6 and 10 processed deer jerky sticks per day, which a quick calculation shows is like 3,000 milligrams of sodium per day. And of course, this is a processed meat. So he's arguing here for red meat not causing cancer. Well, he's slamming down a processed meat, and he'd probably be like, oh, well, it's a healthier processed meat, natural flavors, blurty blur. It's still a processed meat. It still falls into that category. And it is also worth mentioning that he is an investor in that venison company. So he also has not just the motivation to eat those and talk about eating those, but also to talk about how meat is healthier for you than it might actually be. And one Redditor mentioned that he's eating like $900 a month worth of this deer venison, which is wild. But yeah, veganism is expensive though. And I should also mention, as far as that sodium goes, he talks about the dangers of sodium, even on his website, high sodium intake and inflammation and kidney risk and the actual danger of it during aging. Because remember, this is a longevity guy. He's trying to get you to age as gracefully as possible and live long and stuff. But he even talks about the risks of sodium. And of course, to the American Heart Association, I might as well just double down on it. Quote, the science behind sodium reduction is clear. Significant evidence links excess sodium intake with high blood pressure, increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and heart failure. And to Business Insider, one of the articles that covered this, they're saying he's trying to get a high protein intake to keep his muscle mass on because that's associated with healthier aging. So he's slamming down like 100 grams of protein from these processed meat sticks, which, again, actually class 1A carcinogen in order to live longer. So I don't know how his logic around diet works out. It's really strange. And I think that he has some weird bro science-y dietary takes, but he kind of takes this angle of being agnostic or neutral on diet and then pushing exercise, which I think is really marketable and clearly is marketable because it's gotten him to the top of the charts on his book. And final point here, I would say, though, I am a big proponent of keeping muscle on through aging, and I am going to do a video on that in a vegan context as well. So
what?
Oh boy, race lever. Look at Braxton smoking.
He's stressing me out, man. He needs to get up here and prove he's not AI.
Smoking hemp cigarettes.
Say that again? Kind of cut out.
Smoking your hemp cigarettes. Hooligan, your stinky hemp cigarettes.
Vegans are so healthy, we can afford these little things.
Oh boy. You're chopping up.
Going John Bob status.
What?
My connection's really bad right now.
Yeah, your internet's pretty bad. Rad. Awesome.
The Gospel of
the
Hebrews.
I had the speaker up a little too high, so there was an echo. So the YouTube saw the echo. It crushed us for the first hour. Now there's a bunch of people here.
Now they're. Why? Christ Spirit should have come out already.
Yeah. Oh boy. You have any other things you could think of? We had such a crazy week. That's why we lost internet last week where we were, so we didn't do the show. And then a lot's happened in the week since then. And today we were just like, oh crap, I guess the show's happening today. And so the internet all of a sudden was working really well. So we decided to do it, but we were kind of out of step this week. So
still balancing a lot of technical difficulties.
What's that?
I just heard Garble speaking.
That's all we could hear from you.
Oh, I'm trying here.
Though never seeing eye to eye with the original Jerusalem community on many things, including the issue of meat eating for his recruits, in his epistles, even Paul the apostle confirms this leadership role of James the Just, the Lord's brother in Jerusalem. And he himself went to visit him to seek his blessings on a couple of occasions. So, in other words, that saying from the Gospel of Thomas, go to James the Just, wherever you are, go to James the Just. The Apostle Paul, according to his letters preserved in the New Testament did just that. He too went to the Apostle Paul for guidance and blessing on a couple of occasions. Isn't it amazing? I just find those quotes from or about the apostles as being vegetarian to be kind of shocking. When I first learned of them and tracked down the sources, I just found it to be so surprising. St. Peter said, I live on olives and bread, to which I really only add vegetables. The unnatural eating of flesh meats is as polluting as the heathen worship of devils. The Apostle Matthew, and happiness is found in the practice of virtue. Accordingly, the Apostle Matthew partook of seeds and nuts, hard-shelled fruits and vegetables without flesh, unquote. Clement of Alexandria. The Apostle Thomas, he continuously fasts and prays, and abstaining from the eating of flesh and the drinking of wine, he eats only bread with salt, drinks only water, and so on. Acts of Thomas. That's Acts of Thomas in India. That's the famous Acts of Thomas book, chapter 20, about the Apostle Thomas becoming the apostle to the Indians, traveling all the way to India. The Apostle Thomas is associated with the Church of the East, Syria, Mesopotamia, and points east all the way to India. And there seems to be a lot of agreement about the Apostle Thomas being in India. Everyone thinks that, from Gnostics to Catholics to Manichaeans to, of course, the Indian Christians themselves, the Martama Christians who exist in India to this very day by the millions. They too believe that their church was founded by the Apostle Thomas. According to the church historian Eusebius, John never ate meat. Not sure which John, which particular John. I assume the Apostle John, but there are 3 or 4 Johns referred to in the early church. So one of them, probably the Apostle John, never ate meat. James the Just was vegetarian from birth, never ate meat, did not eat flesh, quote unquote. After the break, I want to explore church fathers and other later voices in the 3rd century and just a slightly later period of time, also affirming the existence of this early vegetarian tradition of Christianity. More after the break. You're hearing Spiritual Awakening Radio. Stay tuned for more about evidence for the vegetarianism of Jesus, the apostles, and the Jesus movement. More after these messages. Evidence for the vegetarianism of Jesus, the apostolic leadership of the Hebrew Christians, the Ebionites, today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. Between last week's program and today, 90 minutes on this subject of the vegetarianism of the original Christians. Christianity before Paul. Jewish Christians before Roman Christians. Christianity before Paul. One minor correction or slight clarification. It was the Apostle Paul who went to seek out the guidance and blessings of James the Just, not the other way around. I do this show live without editing, so just to be clear, it was Paul who went to James the Just. And I pointed out in the previous segment that there's a saying in the Gospel of Thomas, saying 12, where the disciples ask, "Who is going to lead us when you depart from us?" And the reply from Christ is, "Wherever you are, go to James the Just. Go to James the Just, for whose sake heaven and earth came to be." And the Apostle Paul did that on a couple of occasions. Now, there are multiple sources for this leadership role of James the Just being described. The scholar Robert Eisenman has a 1,000-page book called James, the Brother of Jesus, saying the very same thing, tying together multiple sources about James the Just being the leader of the Hebrew Christians. And he says there was even a kind of apostolic succession from James the Just, 18 other successors after James the Just in this Ebionite Hebrew Christian community that once upon a time existed in antiquity. Some other clarifications or corrections to people's perceptions. During this series, I do not cite the Essene Gospel of Peace volumes by Edmond Bordeaux-Zeki. They say some great things. There's some nice poetry in there, but they're not ancient texts. There are no Aramaic or Greek manuscripts of the Essene Gospel of Peace. It was mostly authored by Edmond Bordeaux-Zeki himself back in the 1920s, 1930s, not taken from some ancient manuscripts found in the basement of the Vatican. So I don't use those. They say some great things, but they belong in the poetry bin, not in the ancient Christian scriptures bin. And also, endeavoring to be accurate and scholarly, making use of undisputed sources of information that are credible only, I do not use the Essene Humane Gospel because that's a 19th century vegetarian gospel that someone wrote that says some great things and does contain quotes from earlier sources. But again, it's not an ancient text, therefore I do not use it. I do not use channeled writings, such as the Aquarian Gospel. And I stay far, far, far away from the Gospel of Isa. There was a book published by a Russian author called The Unknown Life of Jesus the Christ by Nicholas Natanovich. Natanovich said he was traveling in Tibet and went to a monastery and discovered some Pali language text called the Gospel of Isa. But others went to that same Buddhist library in the monastery later on, and they were told, nope, there's never been a book by that title here. And if you look at the Wikipedia entry for the Gospel of Isa or Nicholas Natanovich, it's not looking so good. Not a credible source, not an ancient text, but something that someone made up during the 19th century. So therefore, I steer very clear, far, far away from that. There is a great veg saying that is attributed to Clement of Alexandria, which I also have not used in this series. It goes something like, don't make your body a graveyard for animals. It says nice things. It's a nice quote, but it is considered apocryphal or not really a quote that is properly attributed to Clement of Alexandria. So it's disputed, don't need it, don't use it. You know, it's not a solid thing that scholars would agree upon as being an ancient text from an ancient manuscript or from an early church father quoting something available to them at the time that is found in a Greek or Latin manuscript that dates back thousands of years, many centuries. So can't use it, and I steer clear of that. I only use the Clementine homilies, the New Testament, and references to the Gospel of the Ebionites and the Gospel of the Hebrews, Gospel of Thomas, those kind of writings which have either ancient manuscripts of them, like the Gospel of Thomas is found in Coptic, and there are a couple of fragmentary Greek editions of the Gospel of Thomas as well, the Oxyrhynchus editions. And I make use of that, or early church fathers quoting from the Gospel of the Hebrews, that sort of thing. But no channeled writings, no disputed texts. The church fathers and other later voices affirming the existence of earlier veg traditions in Christianity. James, the brother of Jesus, lived on seeds and vegetables and did not accept meat or wine. A quote from St. Augustine. The consumption of animal flesh was unknown up until the Great Flood. But since the Great Flood, we have had animal flesh stuffed into our mouths. Jesus the Christ, who appeared when the time was fulfilled, again joined the end to the beginning, so that we are now no longer allowed to eat animal flesh. A pro-veg early church father by the name of Hieronymus, also known as Saint Jerome, who apparently read the Gospel of the Hebrews and was influenced by